Hi everybody, welcome back to another Embargo O'Clock video. I'm here to talk to you about the new faction cards that were released that were not Nilfgaard cards. And while the hype is predominantly surrounded around Nilfgaard, there are 18 new cards that were released for the other factions and neutral. And I don't want those to get lost in the great tide of Nilfgaard. You know, in the blinding light of the golden sun. We don't want that because the other factions, they definitely got some new cards, and these are some interesting cards. Some of them are really hard to, a lot of them are very niche cards or very specific to a meta or very specific to a type of deck. So I think it's going to give some of the factions kind of off-spec decks a little bit more flexibility in cards that they might want to include. I think these bronzes are meant to flesh out the options between archetypes in the other factions. So every faction gets 2 bronze cards, 1 silver card, and 1 gold card, and there are 2 neutral silver cards. And the flavor on these are really good. But these are some interesting cards for sure. Some of them are pretty weird. And well, let's get into it. Let's start with Northern Realms. So the first card we're going to look at are the Northern Realms cards. We're going to start with the 2 bronzes in Northern Realms. The first card here is Cadwenny Siege Expert. Now, if you watched my Nilfgaard video already, or you know about the Nilfgaard cards, you'll know that there is a new tag for these units that are machines. Catapults, ballistae, reinforced trebuchets, and the Mangonel, the Fire Scorpion, and Nilfgaard. So these are now tagged as machines, and it looks like there's going to be some cards that interact with machines. At the moment, this is the only one. The Cadwenny Siege Expert reads, lose 1 strength whenever a non-gold machine is played on your side, then add 3 strength to that unit's strength. So it's a bit wordy, but the point is he has 4 charges on him as his strength, and every time a unit comes down, he goes down 1, and then they go up 3. So if you play a reinforced ballista, that's Northern Realms, which is normally 6 strength, comes down as a 9 strength, and this guy takes a ping to his own strength. It's more interesting to actually imagine getting more than one of these out at a time. And I think it allows you to build, I don't know if this is, time will tell if any of these decks will end up being meta decks or if any of these cards will end up defining a new deck archetype. But basically it allows you to fill your deck with I keep saying catapults. It's not a card. Trebuchets, reinforced trebuchets, ballistas, reinforced ballistas, ballistae. And now, while that would be obviously taking this card to its absolute limit, I'll probably try it by doing this just to see how good it is. But using Reaver Scouts to get a number of these out, full testing one out, it feels a lot like the silver cards that were released in the last patch, also known as the 4 strength, the 4 Forcemen, your silver 4 club, your 4 strength units that have potential to do work, but they just die. This is a bronze card, and I feel like it kind of has the same. This bronze card actually can provide quite a lot of value for a bronze card. So may even worth full testing, maybe worth Reaver Scouting, or even reinforcing, using reinforcements on it to bring all 3 out at once. In a world where this can be an oppressive strategy, again, I think time will tell on this one. I think that the meta is going to be, I think I referred to it today as an upside down Lego box, completely scattered, build it however you want. This card at least offers a new option to Northern Realms and maybe makes some cards that aren't as good a little bit better. So yeah, there's your Cadwenny Siege Expert. Moving right along, Temerian Foot Soldier. There is really not a lot to say about this card. This is Wild Hunt Riders. In a way, it's the old Necker card. Basically, it's a 3 strength ranged unit. It's a foot soldier, but it's a ranged unit. And some of these values may not be finalized. I have a suspicion that some of them aren't finalized. But you play it, and then it plays the rest of them. Deck thinning. You can make a full deck thinning archetype with Reaver Scouts, Temerian Foot Soldier, Reaver Hunters. It's pretty crazy. Now, I know I can tell you right now, as a spoiler if you don't know, but the information is out there. Reaver Scouts are nerfed. I believe they are. You know what? I maybe shouldn't quote it in case I'm wrong. But I do believe that they're nerfed and they can do a little bit less for deck thinning. But then they're giving you deck thinning cards like this. So value of 9 thins your deck. You play it. The base value of the card isn't fantastic. But it will give you a lot when you play it. Deck thinning mechanic. So there you have it. Temerian Foot Soldier. It's a very simple card. That's okay. I'm glad that they're adding simple cards. These are bronze cards. So I think that's totally fine. Silver card, Death Mold. 5 strength siege unit, banish a non-gold card in the opposing graveyard. So, first of all, I like the effect. I think it's good, and I think it will have uses. Second of all, I think his strength is too low, and I don't think he's very good. I can be proven wrong on this one. I just feel like maybe I can take a stance on some of these cards. I think that the effect is good. I think that considering that there are Northern Realms are moving away from graveyard play. Monsters and Nilfgaard are looking at the opposing unit's graveyard, or the opposing player's graveyard, more often than their own. And Scoia'tael doesn't have any resurrection mechanics, although they do use Aglace to play spells out. I mean, I guess there's application if Aglace remains a fantastic card, as she probably will. She's a really good card. But I just feel like the application is limited enough that this should be a higher strength card. So whether or not it'll see play, I mean, they obviously evaluate these cards when they make them. They don't just slap any random number on it. My first glance, it's possible that they had a first take at it as well, with him at 8 or something like that. But, I mean, it does take away an option, but I just think 5 is a little low. Northern Realms gold card. Triss is back. Triss only helping Northern Realms this time around. We got Triss Butterfly Spell. This is a mouthful, this deck description, or this card description, but I think it's pretty simple to understand. Basically, you play her. While she's on the board for you, your cards are buffed by 4 strength. And when she's removed, all your cards go back down. The reason why there's so many words is that I think it's making sure that it's only removing strength from the cards that it buffs, and it won't be removing strength from cards that weren't buffed by Triss for whatever reason. I guess it's not a persistent effect, so if you were to draw a card while she's on the board, that unit might not get buffed. But when you play her, basically your hand, and you play her early in the game, I think this card's pretty cool. First of all, it's a very unique effect that hasn't come up before. Buffing units in your hand, and I think we're going to see a little bit more of that because it's a pretty cool concept. But I think this card is cool because, much like Isengrim on round 1, you don't really want to play into it because he really makes the climb that much more difficult. So this card is similar in that when this card's on the board, you know that your opponent's getting so much more value for every card that they play. It may entice the opponent to pass, and that's why I think this card is pretty good. I'm definitely going to test it. I think it has potential to be a viable card. You know, it could provide you with so much, and I think that there's definitely an aspect of your opponent's reaction to this card that may make it good. So we'll see how it goes. I like it. So now let's talk about Scoia'tael. Starting off with Scoia'tael's bronze card, Dol Blathana Marksman, a 4-strength agile unit. Remove 4 strength from an opposing unit with a strength of 10 or more. This card is bad, and I think that it's probably not final because I do not see why you would play a card like this that can top out at 8 strength with a stipulation like that. Now, I can tell you right now that Dol Blathana archers have changed, but there's still strength removal units, and there's still, you know, good cards, better than this card. You'd have to be building a full strength removal deck. There's got to be a reason, or there may be tuning, but I think as it stands right now, this card is a bad card. Hawker Smuggler. The Hawker cards continue to be kind of, when they're on, like, I think that the Hawker cards are all very strong cards, and this one is interesting. I don't think it's as strong as Hawker Support would be, or even Hawker Healer, but it's interesting. Gain 1 strength whenever a revealed unit appears on the opposing side. 2 strength agile unit, you put it down, and then every unit your opponent plays, it gets stronger and stronger. And if you're playing against a deck that swarms, that doesn't have a way of removing this card, it's just a card that, if remained unchecked, much like the Hawker Support, it can get a lot of value. It needs to get a lot of value, though, for it to be worthy of a bronze spot. I think that if you were building you could build a full Hawker deck, I think, and you could probably have a lot of fun with that. I think that starting it at 2 and only gaining 1, I think anything more would be out of control, right? Absolutely out of control. You can play 3 of these cards. I think that this is probably balanced, right? I just think it's going to be too slow, too easy to kill. But I think that my mind's not made up that it's a bad card, this one in particular. But I think that, yeah, it definitely, time will tell on this one. I'm going to give this one some experimenting for sure. Dennis Cranmer is your Scoia'tael silver card. 4 strength, agile unit. At the end of each turn, reset all other non-gold units on the row to base strength. Now, I don't know if this is supposed to be like Letho in that you can play it on your side or your opposing side. There is no disloyal. There is no disloyal icon on it that is telling me that. I don't think this card is very good at all. It's only 4 strength, and it's basically making sure that if your units are wounded, that he brings them back up to full base strength. You know, and so like weather, it basically, I mean, you might as well just make something weather immune or give it Quen or something like that. I just feel like if this is only meant for your side of the board, I don't get it. I'll be happy to be corrected on this one. But if you can put on your opponent's side of the board, that's a different story. Then I think it actually has some application. And I feel like maybe it wasn't in the description that we received. We received official wording. This wording is taken directly from a document. These are special. This is special stuff that was provided to us, the content creators. So, so this is the official spelling of the card, and this is so I added this on top of the artwork, but I basically took it directly out of the document. And if I missed it, then I missed it. But I think that this card needs to be disloyal to be good. Otherwise, I don't really see how this can possibly be competitive enough to be in a deck. Finally, the gold card for Scoia'tael is Ithleen, and it is a 4-strength agile unit, another one. After 2 turns, lock all non-golds on the row and the opposite row. Now, there is a description of lock as well, and I think I left it on a different card that does locking. But I will explain locking to you now. When you lock a card, a nice graphic comes over it, chain and lock, and it locks it kind of right in the middle. And when that card is locked, it loses all tokens, and tokens in Gwent are identified as the token that represents weather immunity, that's one of them, resilience, that's another one, and Quen, that is another one. It also prevents all abilities that would trigger active abilities like Clan Moon Pirate's ability or Reaver Hunter's ability or anything that counts down or any active abilities. It prevents them from triggering as long as it remains on the battlefield. So after 2 turns, she locks the row that you place her on your side, and then the opposing row as well. Again, I'm sorry, Scoia'tael players. I think that the Scoia'tael cards are the worst cards, and I think that this card, as it stands, as the information that we received right now, this card, I've yet to see. It doesn't remove buffs, right? The lock doesn't remove buffs. I yet to like understand how locking can be so valuable that this would be the gold card that you receive at this strength level of 4. And with the stipulation that she will also lock your row. Maybe that's not a big deal for you. Maybe you build a deck that doesn't matter if they don't care about locking mechanics. They do stuff when you play them, or they're just bigger units. But I don't think this card's very good, and we'll see if this is how it makes it to the patch. A lot of these aren't final, and you'll see as we keep going that some of these values may be off, and some of the cards actually weren't provided because I think they were being reworked at the time. But let's go into the Skellige cards and see what they got in this patch. Bronze card for Skellige, Clan Drummond Shieldmaiden. I think this card's pretty cool. 5-strength ranged card. Whenever this unit is weakened but not destroyed, play an instance of it from your deck. So as I said at the beginning of the video when I was saying that certain archetypes that do exist on a fringe level are getting some love, much like those who really like to play machines in Northern Realms. There's some Henselt decks that like Reinforced Ballista. Maybe they got a little better with the Siege Expert. So it's the self-wounding style of play. You might be playing Croc on Crate with this kind of deck, and the Young Berserkers or the Savage Bears. But keep in mind, these ladies start at 5, which is actually quite strong, considering that when you play them, they wouldn't necessarily be 5. And maybe you play one early, you don't get a chance to weaken it, you pull it out of the graveyard, you can still activate it. I think that this card, you know, as it stands, it comes out as a 7 in round 3. You probably want to thin as fast as possible, but it starts at 5. So when you look at like Temerian Foot Soldiers, which have a no stipulation thinning, this does have a stipulation thinning, but it's much stronger than the Temerian Foot Soldiers. And there are a lot of ways you can wound your units in Skellige. This may be making Warcry more viable if that deck gets more viable as well. I can tell you that Croc on Crate got a buff. The on-crate warriors are stronger now. They come out at 7 and not 5, I believe, or they come out at 6. They may come out at 6. Don't quote me on that, but I can tell you that he was buffed. There's a lot of the patch notes and patch changes that weren't able to be covered, but I think that there's a self-wounding Skellige deck out there that can utilize these cards, and deck thinning is a powerful mechanic. If you give it to a certain archetype, that archetype becomes better because deck thinning is very good. So take that for what you will. Clan Tordarroch Armorsmith is a weather immune 4-strength agile unit for Skellige. Reset all non-gold units on the road to base strength. So unlike Dennis Cranmer, which I didn't think was very good, this card, while not fantastic, I think has application and is a bit more clear what it does in that he comes in and saves your units from weather. You play him, he clears any debuffs, any wounding on those units. He is immune to weather himself. So that's what he does. I think he might be a one-of in some metas. I don't think you'd run 3 of them. It would have to be an insane weather meta, but it makes Skellige more weather resistant. And I think I think the value of weather, the value of buffs, the value of weather immunity, it's all going to be shaken up. And if weather immunity proves to be very strong, the more weather immune units you have, the better. And although this card would suggest that you're not running weather immune units because you would need this guy to come in and save you. But I mean, anything, if buffs are stronger, then wounding is stronger. The jury's going to be out on this one. I don't think it's great. I think that it's not bad because it's a weather immune unit and those always have value. Another thing about this patch is that a lot of the card names are kind of hard to pronounce. So this is, I'm going to say this is Gengifret. Discard a non-gold unit from your deck, a 6th-strength siege unit. So another archetype that's getting some love is the discard archetype, probably helmed by King Bran, who also got a big change. Again, I don't want you to quote me on that because I think a lot of these things were in flux, but basically he discards cards from your deck now and not your hand. Still buffs them, but I don't believe he draws a card anymore. Again, it's not really about King Bran. I think it's more about this card being able to hold the silver slot that makes more sense for what you're trying to do. So it thins your deck. It puts a card in your graveyard. Good for Shieldmaidens and cards that you want to make sure that you're assured to draw, perhaps through Resurrection. So if you had a silver card that you wanted to get all the time, you're also running Sig. You're also running Restoration. Geng here will put that card in your graveyard to make sure that you can guaranteed get it out of your graveyard. Sometimes with graveyard play, you may not have the units you need in the graveyard, or maybe really deep round 1 if you're playing Skellige in that style. Or round 2, you may just need a little bit more help. I think that people are going to make this card work. I think that it may actually be viable. I think it's going to take some experimentation, but I think that it's decent. Deck thinning, graveyard play, it's what Skellige is all about. Gold card for Skellige. This one's kind of awesome. It's kind of cool. Again, these cards are very strange cards. The application for all of these cards, almost all of them, is not immediately clear, which is probably the most interesting thing about them. The Wild Boar of the Sea, 8-strength siege unit, immune to weather. When on a row affected by weather, at the start of your turn, place a Clan Moon Pirate at the bottom of your deck. So I played with this card once. I didn't play a great game with it, but I may upload that gameplay anyway, even though I think I just was throwing cards around just trying to see how they worked. But this card is you need to rain the row first, so there's a negative right away. That's kind of a tough stipulation to justify unless you need to rain the row. But let's say you're playing Weather Skellige and you're all about just weathering everything all the time. Maybe that'll be a thing. There used to be a Herald archetype that worked. You rain the row, you place the ship down, and then it starts generating pirates at the bottom of your deck. So the scenario I would like you to envision is that you have a Clan Moon pirate on the board, or you have the light longship, or the warship, sorry, the one that pings when you discard a unit. You play a pirate with that card on. You discard 2 pirates. They ping twice or they activate twice. If the Wild Boar of the Sea is still on the board, pirates continuously get put into the deck. They get put into the bottom of the deck. So if you were to replay that pirate or resurrect a pirate or have a second pirate in your hand, there are a number of new charges for those discard mechanics. So the pirate's function is constantly, you are basically reloading your deck with pirates, so every time you play a pirate, more of them keep going into the graveyard. Also, you're putting a lot of extra units into the graveyard if Man Lugos is a card that you want to use as well as one of your gold cards. And I think that's totally fair. I think that that's a cool archetype, and I think that I'm going to try to make that one work. I think that there's a Wild Boar Madman Lugos deck out there that uses pirates and pirate captains, and just too many pirates on the sea. So it's very niche and interesting. We'll see if it's competitive, but I think I like cards like this coming out. I would say that this is a Johnny card, and in a lot of ways, I'm a Johnny player. So look it up if you don't know what that means. Final cards we're going to look at are monsters. So I have a disclaimer about the monster cards. Two things to say. One, there is no second bronze card and there is no silver card for me to show you official artwork and official description of. I do have how they appeared in the collection in the patch that I played, but I'm going to omit the description from them as to not jump to any conclusions because I think they're getting reworked. Second thing I want to say, monsters got good cards. So this one is Harpy. 3 strength range unit, spawn 2 Harpy eggs on random rows. So the Harpy comes out and then the 2 eggs spawn out just like Vriad Vanguard spitting out Neophytes. What are Harpy eggs? Harpy eggs are 1 strength units that can be on any row. When this unit strength is absorbed by another, add an additional 9 strength to that absorbing unit. This is so good on a couple of levels. First of all, it's good. Makes Ekamaras really strong. It makes, there's so much, I feel like there's so much additional information I need to give on these cards, but Katakan is different now. Vran Warrior is different now. And both of these units are consume on play cards. Vran Warrior was actually overpowered, I think, when we played him. I think that card might need some tuning. But let's just say that Monsters Consume has got a huge infusion of strength and choice. And I think that this card is really strong. Now, moving on to the card that was absent. So I'm going to show you. This is the Selena Harpy. Now, the Selena Harpy at the time of playing it, now I've omitted the description because this card was not good really at all. It turned your Harpy eggs into Harpies. When you turned your Harpy eggs into Harpies on the board, so it hatched your eggs, turned them into Harpies instead of allowing them to be consumed. When you hatched the eggs, they came out as Harpies, which were 3 strength. They didn't spawn more eggs when you did that, so it basically turned a unit with a lot of potential into a crappy, just a 3 strength unit. I imagine you would play this to make sure that your Harpy eggs weren't dead, but I don't even think it's worth a bronze slot to do that. There are enough consume cards in the game to eat those eggs. One thing I forgot to mention about the eggs, though, my apologies. The eggs are breedable, so you can copy the eggs. And there's another thing I need to mention to you. Monster Nest does not duplicate units anymore that are breedable. It instead takes any breedable unit and then spawns 4 of them straight up. So Monster Nest, with this card, puts a whole row of eggs out, even with just 1 egg on the board. I think we're going to see a crazy consume monster, a bunch of different variations. I think there's not going to be one way to play consume monsters. They have such an infusion of variety. One of my favorite parts about this, and I got some gameplay for you. To show you in a later gameplay video that I'm going to release later on. But there's your Selena Harpy. The silver card also was absent from the notes we received, but the silver card is going to be Old Spear Tip. Now, what this card was trying to do when we played the patch was he's essentially asleep, right? He's asleep. So what you do is you play Old Spear Tip on a row, and when enough units are played on the opposing row, he wakes up and then he damages them all. And then when units are removed from the row, he goes back to sleep and then he buffs all the units on your row. It was a really complicated card, and I don't know if it was finalized, but I think that's like the spirit of the card. Something that is, it reacts to the opposing row. He wakes up and he does something, and then he goes back to sleep and he does something else. So I think it's a really interesting card. I hope when they finalize it, it ends up being, really, really cool card. But I don't know if it was, it felt like an ultra slow card, and, a 4 strength silver card. We know that if they're actually ever a threat, they'll be killed. So let's talk about the gold card for monsters, the Succubus. This card is very, very cool. 10 strength disloyal gold card. You play it on a row. After 2 turns, the strongest non-gold unit on the row goes over to the other side of the battlefield. Ties are resolved randomly. So you give your opponent 10 gold strength, but you can choose the row. I think that's where this card actually starts to shine for me, because it's not like you're locked, like Scorch locks you into definitely removing the highest strength thing on the board. This, you choose the row, you really refine what it can do. So it's not, so if there is a specific unit you want and it happens to be the highest strength unit on that row, that's what you do. And now your opponent has to do something about it or you're going to get it. Now, you can steal units that get you a much more value than 10. Will you have that option all the time? So she kind of has Philippa Earhart syndrome in that you may not really have a great use for this disloyal card, but it is still a cool card with cool flavor. And I think that you would consider playing this card, or at least trying it out. We'll have to see how this card, it depends on how many ways your opponent can stop it. Your opponent can only stop it a couple ways. One, by damaging his or her own unit on the row so you don't get it and you get something else. And that even that has to have the stipulations of having more than one unit on the row. And also, generally, I don't think players do that or have the ability to do that on the fly. It's like if you were avoiding Bork or avoiding Scorch, like would you actually damage your own units to do that on a regular basis? So I don't think there's a ton of ways to play around this card, and that's why I think this card may actually be competitive, or at least at the very least really surprise people on the ladder. You might run into it every now and then, kind of like how Bork's rarity will surprise you now. So I don't know, I'm looking forward to seeing how this card goes. So let's finally just close it off with the last two cards. These are two new neutral silver cards. Check these out. A little lore for you. Maybe you played Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and maybe you know the city of Novigrad and how there are 3 major crime lords in Novigrad. We got King of Beggars last patch. We get the other 2 in this patch. The first one here is Cleaver. He's a 5-strength melee unit. Lock a non-gold unit on the battlefield. So this has the description of locking here that it was given to me. And when it says tokens, it is referring to resilience, weather immunity, and Quen type abilities. Anything that has a visual indicator or anything that basically is a persistent effect, it's removed. So now you're weather vulnerable. You are not staying on the board after the round ends. You are not protected from your next damaging source, and if you have an active ability, it is now gone. 5-strength unit. Now, if you saw Nilfgaard reveal, you know that Ox is a Nilfgaard unit that basically does the exact same thing, only it's a 6-strength unit. So Nilfgaard has a better version of Cleaver, or you could also say that Nilfgaard has 2 options for locking cards in the silver slot. Is it competitive enough? Is it worth having 2? I think time will tell. Again, like I said before in the other cards that do locking, I think the locking mechanic remains to be seen. Just see how valuable it actually is, as it doesn't actually remove buffs. It just removes active abilities. But yeah, we'll definitely see about that. And then the last card we're going to be talking about, Cyprien Wiley, also known as Whoreson Jr. This was a bad dude in Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and he looks like a bad dude here. He's got his hounds ready. This guy's all tatted up. Look at this dude. He's just a scumbag. He's an absolute scumbag. Remove 2 base strength from all opposing non-gold units. When this card is removed, add 2 strength to all non-gold units on the battlefield. And he's a 3-strength loyal siege unit. So he's similar to cards like Sabrina or Iris. He's a card that lives to die, and there's a benefit for you doing that. So, but he's a bit better in that you have a lot of control over this. So when you play him, he's like old Stammelford's, right? He hits the whole board for 2. And then when he is removed, while he undoes that damage, he also buffs your side of the board by 2. So he has a 2-stage buffing plan that he's pitching to you, and he's using his dogs as persuasion, perhaps. I don't know if this card's good enough. I think it's slow, and I think it's kind of going to end up falling in like Iris, in a card that just maybe not be played that often. I think if you're not playing cards like Iris or Sabrina, I don't think you'd play a card like this either. Again, I'm happy to be proven wrong. It may just be a card that's supposed to flesh out the collection, give you some options, maybe just kind of hang around in case the cards out there make it better in the future. And I think it's okay to design cards like that. I think that higher values for this card make him too strong. And I think you can play him after a pass, and he's good like Stammelford's or Herald is in a way. But I guess, he's in the middle for me, really. I think a lot of these cards, very strange, very niche cards. They're going to change the way we play a lot of the factions. They're going to surprise you sometimes when you see them, and they're going to allow you more options. But they're all very niche and very strange cards. Am I alone in thinking that? Let me know in the comments if you think that these are all kind of very strange cards, and if you think that the monster cards are just awesome like I do. I think the monster's got the best cards personally. So that'll do it for all the new non-Nilfgaard faction cards. Thanks so much for joining me on the video. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video. This is me getting into YouTube a little bit more, so I hope you enjoyed my content, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again.